So, una sa lahat, babasahin ko muna itong Batas Pambansa Building 220. At first, yung IRR 2008, yung babasahin ko na makukuha natin sa HLURB website. Normally kasi pag IRR, marami siyang annexes. Tapos naka-annex yung BP 220. Tapos nung nakita ko yung annex, 2 pages lang. Sabi ko, wow, ganun ba kaikli ang BP 220? So, hinanap ko yung original. Ang nakita kong copy na from a government website is only from DAR website. So, if you can see, this is from DAR website. And this is the longer version of BP 220, which I'm going to start to read now. So, this is March 15, 1982, Batas Pambansa Building 220. An act authorizing the Ministry of Human Settlements to establish and promulgate different levels of standards and technical requirements for economic and socialized housing projects in urban and rural areas from those provided under Presidential Decrees numbered 957, 1216, 1096, and 1185. So that is 1957, 1016, sorry, 1216, and then 1096 and 1185 na bukod ang BP 220 sa mga PD number na to. So, let's start. BP 220, Section 1. It is hereby declared a policy of the government to promote and encourage the development of economic and socialized housing projects, primarily by the private sector, in order to make available adequate economic and socialized housing units for average and low-income earners in urban and rural areas. Section 2. As used in this Act, economic and socialized housing refers to housing units which are within the affordability level of the average and low-income earners, which is 30% of the gross family income as determined by the National Economic and Development Authority from time to time. It shall also refer to the government-initiated sites and services development and construction of economic and socialized housing projects in depressed areas. Section 3. To carry out the foregoing policy, the Ministry of Human Settlements is authorized to establish and promulgate different levels of standards and technical requirements for the development of economic and socialized housing projects and economic and socialized housing units in urban and rural areas from those provided in Presidential Decree number 957, so PD 957, otherwise known as the Subdivision and Condominium Buyers Protective Decree, and then Presidential Decree number 1216 or PD 1216, defining open space in residential subdivision, Presidential Decree number 1096, PD 1096, otherwise known as the National Building Code of the Philippines, and Presidential Decree numbered 1185 or PD 1185, otherwise known as the Fire Code of the Philippines, and the rules and regulations promulgated thereunder in consultation with the Ministry of Public Works and Highways, the Integrated National Police, and other appropriate government units and instrumentalities and private associations. Section 4. The standards and technical requirements to be established under Section 3 hereof shall provide for environmental ecology, hygiene and cleanliness, physical, cultural, and spiritual development, and public safety, and may vary in each region, province, or city depending on the availability of indigenous materials for building construction and other relevant factors. Section 5. The different levels of standards and technical requirements that shall be established and promulgated by the Ministry of Human Settlements only after public hearing, and shall be published in 2 newspapers of general circulation in the Philippines for at least once a week for 2 consecutive weeks, and shall take effect 30 days after the last publication. Section 6. This act shall take effect upon its approval. Approved on March 25, 1982. Published in the Official Gazette, Volume 78, Number 51, page 7120 on December 20, 1982. Annex A. Rules and Standards for Economic and Social Housing Projects to Implement Batas Pambansa. Pursuant to Section 3 of Batas Pambansa Building 220 and by virtue of Section 4F of Presidential Decree 1396, the following rules and levels of standards are hereby promulgated. Rule 1. General Provisions. Section 1. Scope of Application. These rules and standards shall apply to the development of economic and socialized housing projects in urban and rural areas as defined in Section 2 of BP Building 220. They shall apply to the development of either a house and lot or a house or lot only. These rules and standards shall also apply in the case of individual lot owner who belong to the category of average of low-income earners as defined in BP Building 220 and who shall cause the construction of their houses after the effectivity of these rules. Section 2. Declaration of Policies. It is a policy of the government to promote and encourage the development of economic and socialized housing projects, primarily by the private sector, in order to make available adequate economic and socialized housing units for average and low-income earners in urban and rural areas. Rule 2. Definition of terms. Section 3. As used in these rules, the following words and phrases are defined and understood to have the meaning correspondingly indicated therein. Alley. A public way intended to serve both pedestrian and emergency vehicles and also access to lots, both and always connecting to streets. Block. A parcel of land bounded on the sides by streets or alleys or pathways or other natural or man-made features and occupied by or intended for buildings. Cluster housing. A single-family attached dwelling containing 3 or more separate living units grouped closely together to form relatively compact structures. Commission shall mean the Human Settlements Regulatory Commission. Community facilities or structures intended to community facilities. Facilities or structures intended to serve common needs and for the benefit of the community, such as neighborhood, multi-purpose center, health center, drugstore, school, livelihood center, etc. Dwelling. A building designed or used as residence for one or more families. Single-family detached. A dwelling for one family which is completely surrounded by permanent open spaces with independent access, services, and use of land. Single-family attached. A dwelling containing 2 or more separate living units, each of which is separated from another by party or lot lines, walls, and provided with independent access, services, and use of land. Such dwellings shall include duplexes, row houses, or terraces, and cluster housing. Multi-family dwelling. A dwelling on one lot containing separate living units for 3 or more families, usually provided with common access, services, and use of land. Economic and socialized housing. A type of housing project provided to moderately low-income families with lower interest rates and longer amortization period. Fire block. Any wall which separates 2 abutting living units so as to resist the spread of fire. Such wall shall be of masonry construction, e.g., cement, hollow blocks, bricks, reinforced concrete, etc., at least 4 inches thick, and shall extend throughout the whole length of the living units and from the lowest portion of the wall adjoining the living units up to the point just below the roof covering of purlins. Fire-resistive time period rating. Fire-resisted time period is the length of time a material can withstand being burned, which may be 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, etc. Firewall. A fire block which extends vertically from the lowest portion of the wall which adjoins the two living units up to a minimum height of 0.3 meter above the highest portion of the roof attached to it. The far wall shall extend horizontally up to a minimum distance of 0.3 meter beyond the outermost edge of the abutting living units. Frontage. That part or end of a lawn which abuts a street. Living unit. A dwelling or portion thereof providing complete living facilities for one family, including provisions for living, sleeping, cooking, eating, bathing, and toilet facilities and laundry facilities, the same as a single-family dwelling unit. Lot or plot. A portion of a subdivision or any parcel of land intended as a unit for transfer of ownership or for building development. Lot line wall. A wall used only by the party upon whose lot the wall is located, erected at a line separating two parcels of land, each of which is a separate real estate entity. Occupancy. The purpose for which a building is used or intended to be used. The term shall also include the building or room housing such use. Change of occupancy is not intended to include change of tenants or proprietors. Open space shall refer to areas allocated for the following purposes: circulation, community facilities, park playgrounds, easements, courts. Party wall, a wall used jointly by two parties under easement agreement, erected upon the line separating two parcels of land, each of which is a separate real estate. Park playground, that portion of the subdivision which is generally not built on and intended for passive or active recreation. Path walk, footpath, a public way intended for pedestrian and which cuts across a block to provide access to adjacent streets or property with maximum length of 100 meters if connecting to roads and 50 meters if terminating in a dead end. Row house, a single-family attached dwelling containing 3 or more separate living units designed in such a way that they abut each other at the sides as in a row and are separated from each other by party walls, provided with independent access, services, and use of land. Technical requirements shall refer to the set of documents required by the Commission for the processing and approval of economic and socialized housing projects, including systems and procedures for the implementation and enforcement of BP 220.